We have quite rich power supply in Denmark, and we have the most reliable grid supply in Europe. I think it's above 99% uptime that we see in Denmark. And we rank among the top 3 regions with the lowest power prices in Europe.
Hello and welcome to Cool Vector. I'm David Snow, your host. And today we're joined by Magnus Kristinsson of atNorth, Pernille Hoffmann of Digital Realty for Denmark and Nordics, and Henrik Hansen, the CEO of the Danish Datacenter Industrien. Welcome all of you to Cool Vector, and I'm really looking forward to diving into the opportunity for digital infrastructure in Denmark. Henrik and Pernille, you are in Copenhagen, and Magnus, you are currently in Iceland. It's very interesting how nations around the world are positioning themselves to become leaders in digital infrastructure, and Denmark appears to be at the cutting edge of those efforts. Denmark is widely seen as being a gateway to the rest of Europe and particularly to the Nordics. 80% of Denmark's power is renewable, comes from solar and wind. The hyperscalers have definitely discovered Denmark, and in fact, there are hyperscaler mega campuses either already built or in the works, backed by Meta, Apple, and Google, among others. So clearly there's a lot going on in Denmark, despite the fact that it's not necessarily one of the world's most populated countries. So I'd love to learn, how is it that all this is happening? What are the secrets to success? What is the strategy?
To set it in a historical context, for many decades, actually, we have had a tradition of close work between the public sector and the private sector. One example going way back to early 80s is windmill industry that really, for many years, was a close public-private partnership. And it took a long time before it had its breakthrough commercially. So if we hadn't had this kind of cooperation, we would never have succeeded becoming one of the leaders in wind energy. That's one of the traditions that the whole society is really based on. And I think that's a big value for our society, also when we welcome foreign investors into the country.
What is the case for Denmark as a digital hub, as a place where data centers can thrive? What are the main factors that give it an advantage?
From the inception of my career in the industry, I have been super excited to the opportunity that Denmark brings. So our focus is high density workloads, typically AI, HPC. In that perspective, Denmark brings a lot of very nice merits. The high ratio of renewables on the grid, the heat reuse, the conditions created by the physical location of Denmark is excellent, especially in the context of atNorth. Denmark is the region where we operate that has the closest proximity to Central Europe, only a few milliseconds from London, Amsterdam, Frankfurt, Paris. Currently, 4 out of the 5 main hyperscalers operate and already have their own builds in the region. It's very easy to do business in Denmark.
On top of what Magnus was talking about, which I absolutely agree to, I think I can mention the power. So we have quite rich power supply in Denmark, and we have the most reliable grid supply in Europe. I think it's above 99% uptime that we see in Denmark. And we rank among the top 3 regions with the lowest power prices in Europe. And then, of course, we have the latency. On top of that, we have the connectivity. So we are a natural hub for internet traffic between mainland Europe, Eastern Europe, North America, and the northern part of Europe. Also, several subsea cables landing in Denmark, connecting us with the rest of the world. And then we have this mild climate. So we are not as cold as Iceland or Norway, Sweden, Finland, but we still have a quite mild climate that allows us for low energy cooling. We actually do on average 8 months a year with free cooling. That results in a really low PUE for us. We don't have that risk of damages that we might see in other countries like earthquake, hurricanes, volcanoes, etc.
One doesn't often hear about natural disasters in Denmark.
No.
Within the world of data centers, digital infrastructure, particularly in North America, there is a view that our goal should be 100% renewable. But on the way to that goal, there's absolutely no way that these data centers can simply start life being 100% renewable. There's going to have to be some sort of thermal energy baseline to power these data centers. Sometimes the sun doesn't shine, sometimes the wind doesn't blow, and so you're going to need to have that natural gas-powered energy for your data center in order to keep it up and running. How is it that Denmark is so confident? Can it really power all these data centers with just wind and solar?
I think it's worth mentioning or adding to wind and solar that we're also very big on green biogas. This means that in our gas pipeline, close to 50% is actually green biogas. And by 2030, we expect to be close to 100%. One of the key areas that is really being focused on now is how can we work with other types of backups instead of having diesel generators? Can we do other things with hydrogen or batteries and combination of those sorts, and actually provide green backup so you have sort of a 24/7 guarantee on green power.
In the States, the largest hyperscalers, again, have all said that they have goals for renewable energy, but it appears that the sort of zero emission goal is a lot closer in the Nordics.
The Danish enterprises' awareness around sustainability it's a significant criteria in their decision-making process. So it's not just an ask, it's kind of a demand that we do supply 100% renewable energy in our data centers. And we have done that for more than a decade now in Denmark. So it's a natural thing for us. Latest thing is actually 24/7 power matching, which we just implemented in Sweden and is going to include in Denmark within a very short time. And that is not only buying 100% renewable energy, but it's leveling up the sustainability efforts. It means that the renewable energy generation is measured hourly. Our data center consumption is then tracked by smart meters to facilitate this precise matching. And that allows us to actually choose the specific renewable energy source we want to use. As you just said, the sun doesn't shine at nighttime. But that ensures that every kilowatt hour that we use is matched with clean, renewable energy.
Magnus, in Iceland, the sun does shine at nighttime, right? So that's is that an advantage? But tell us about how you think about renewable energy, the demand for it, and are you confident that as the demand for compute continues to grow, that you will be able to source sufficient renewable energy for your data center network?
One of the core business ideas behind atNorth is to operate on renewable energy only. The energy grid in Iceland has nothing but renewables. In Iceland, we have geothermal and hydro. Hydro is supported with large hydro reservoirs. Most of the customers that we get, they are coming to the Nordics. It's not, of course, we have Nordic customers, but they are considering the Nordics because of the power mix that the Nordics offers. Companies will continue to want to move the data to regions with the lowest possible environmental impact.
What incentives does the Danish government offer to groups that are thinking of building digital infrastructure in Denmark?
I think the incentive is more really becoming part of this ambitious goal that we have for Denmark in general about very ambitious emission targets, climate targets by 2030, reducing by 70%, which is above the normal targets in other countries and in the EU. So we try to lift the bar of what is achievable. You could say we are in this boat together, so everybody has to pitch in if we are going to reach these targets. So it's more a cooperative approach rather than giving big tax incentives.
It seems like there is a consensus that digital infrastructure is good for Denmark, but can you explain why our data center is good for Denmark?
Well, there are some estimates that every Dane every day is in touch with maybe 30 to 40 different data centers through the way we live. If you go to the doctor, you see your medical journal. If you watch a film, if you buy in the grocery store, if you do financial transactions, everything is digitalized. Everything goes through data centers. So I think the best way to show it would, of course, be to turn off data centers for a couple of hours and see what happens. But I'm not recommending that strategy, but that would make it very visible.
As the only of the two guests will not be a Danish citizen, Danes are incredibly clever people. They've had to do with very few natural resources. They have had to take clever steps in building their economy, and they have certainly succeeded extremely well. Just think of any nation in the world with close to zero natural resources that still has an energy grid with 84% renewable energy flowing on the grid. That's amazing. And data centers are such a critical infrastructure for any development. That is why the Danes have built favorable conditions for data centers in Denmark.
Maybe we can talk a little bit about the influence of the hyperscalers in the Danish market. What has been the effect of the attention and the capital coming in, and how has that affected the business opportunity for your two companies?
Well, I think it has definitely created a lot of awareness that the hyperscalers are located and based in Denmark. It has a huge impact, and it creates a lot of traction, you can say, for other international companies to come and place themselves in Denmark as well.
Hyperscalers have definitely been foreigners into the Nordic region. Before other international clients, the hyperscalers already had massive build-outs, especially in Denmark, obviously, but also in Sweden and Finland. This has made our lives obviously much easier because they are kind of a role model, the hyperscalers. They have created a myriad of great employees, a skilled data center workforce, and building the ecosystem needed for operators like atNorth to successfully operate and build in Denmark.
10 years ago, we didn't have any data center capacity. The hyperscalers had accelerated the development because the size of the investments that they have made, and also because all of them basically decided to build in Denmark. It was a good signal to the surrounding world that this is an attractive market.
I have a question about perhaps the creation of high-class problems from all of the success and growth that data centers in Denmark are experiencing. Magnus and Pernille, have there been either types of human capital or physical parts or any element of the broader data center ecosystem that has been in short supply that you've had a hard time securing because the demand is so high?
The time is becoming even more urgent with the development, especially also within AI. We see this development of urgency really taking off. But we do see that these long lead items are the ones that are setting the deadline for when we can operate new data centers. So we try to be looking into the future as much as we can to accommodate these issues. But it is an issue that we see, and it actually started when we saw COVID coming back in 2020. And since then, it has been a struggle if you are not planning in due time.
We obviously have similar challenges at atNorth. We are commissioning 100 megawatts of IT load in 5 different sites across the Nordics this year. Most of that capacity was sold in the past 12 to 18 months. So we have had to plan intelligently to be able to secure timelines. We invest in those long lead items so that we can deliver to the timelines that we as a company promise our customers. This we can do as we are using the same reference design in all of our sites. And we can therefore move those long lead items to the different sites as customer demand requires.
How about human capital? Of course, there's kind of 2 major phases for data centers. You build them and then you run them. Does Denmark have the right kind of workers and labor to meet this demand?
I have the comparison to the other Nordic countries, and Denmark is absolutely best positioned of all the Nordic countries with in respect of this. Companies like Pernille's Digital Realty have created the ecosystem of well-educated and skilled workforce. So Denmark is absolutely great in that respect. We are now even temporarily exporting skilled Danish workforce to some of our other sites around the Nordic because the talent that you find in Denmark is absolutely great.
Education is free in Denmark, and we are quite known to run a very flat organization structure with high responsibility at all levels. So all in all, very educated and talented population, which is also very engaged and responsible. We need to focus on keep educating new talent, especially with an expected increase in the industry of, I think it's 100% or something within the next 10 to 15 years. So at Digital Realty, we obviously also focus on this by having trainees and interns and trying to recruit new talents directly from the schools and inspire all the young people to direct their career our way.
And I can add, as an industry association, that we work closely with the educational sector to make them aware of the career opportunities in our sector, because it's not a given that they select data centers over pharma or energy sector or whatever, where we compete, you could say, on some of the same skills. So it's very important to attract more young people into these types of critical infrastructure sectors.
Pernille, Digital Realty is backing a national AI innovation center with the Novo Nordisk Foundation and EIFO owning and operating a supercomputer. What is that project and what can you tell us about it?
EIFO is the Export and Investment Fund of Denmark. So IFO and NVIDIA, together with the Novo Nordisk Foundation, they have established the Danish Center for AI Innovation. And in October last year, they launched Denmark's first AI-ready supercomputer called Gefion, which we host at Digital Realty. Gefion is the 7th fastest computer in the world and is ranked as number 21 globally on the top 500 list of the world's most powerful computers. They have selected a few focus areas within pharma and biotechnology, sustainability, and quantum computing. I believe that Gefion will have an enormous influence on AI-based research and business development in the coming years in Denmark.
Magnus, can you please give us the highlights of the recently announced DENO2 megacenter that atNorth is leading?
We will be building on a farmed land west of Denmark in Jutland. It's a 170-hectare greenfield site. From our perspective, the site is extremely strategically located to serve not only Denmark, but European customers. And also not to forget that the site is fairly close to all of the hyperscale builds. And the first power will become available in 2027. However, this site is much more than that. We want to design a site where there are streams coming from the data centers can be used by nearby communities. One example of that is obviously heat reuse. That is the plan, and we already have an ongoing dialogue with the local municipality. Moreover, we have a contract with a company called Orm that is planning to reuse waste heat from the site to grow tomatoes. Not only does the heat not go wasted, but it reduces carbon footprint of tomatoes grown in Denmark, since most of them are imported from more southern parts of Europe. So now they can grow tomatoes all year round in Denmark, really sweet tomatoes for the Danish market. And this is just an example of how data centers can create positive impact.
I look forward to eating my first Danish digital tomato. That sounds delicious and also good for the environment and me.
Danish winter tomato.
Danish winter tomatoes. Okay.
Yeah.
Would they taste good served with some pickled herring? Is that what you would recommend?
I'm certain they will.
There seems to be a formula for success that is developing in the Nordic regions and obviously in Denmark around sustainable digital infrastructure. What advice would you have for other governments around the world that want to replicate that success? If the head of state of some other country called you up and said, hey, how do I do what Denmark is doing? What would you say?
We created a year and a half ago what we call the Net Zero Innovation Hub, where we have a couple of the hyperscalers, we have a colo, we have several solution providers going together to develop solutions where you can accelerate the race to net zero. It's based here in Denmark. My advice to other countries would be you have to bring a lot of different parties into the same room and decide on the strategy. You have to bring in various knowledge from different sectors, because These things are going so fast now. The growth is tremendous. So we can't just solve these challenges by doing what we did last year. So we need other types of partnerships, other types of regulations if we are going to do this AI enrollment and digital journey without killing our climate. We have a big task here.
Excellent. Henrik Hansen of the Danish Datacenter Industrien, Magnus Kristinsson of atNorth, and Pernille Hoffmann of Digital Realty in Denmark and Nordics. Thank you so much for coming on Cool Vector and sharing your intelligence with us and helping us understand the amazing opportunity for sustainable data centers and how Denmark has become a leader in that opportunity.